Emma Rodriguez sat in the back seat of her mother's old car. Her hands were cold and shaking. She held her violin case close to her chest like it was a precious treasure. The case was old and scratched. Someone had given it to her teacher years ago, and her teacher had given it to Emma when she started lessons. The car made strange noises as it moved down the highway. Emma's mother, Maria, kept looking at the road ahead with worried eyes. They had been driving for almost 5 hours. They left their small town early in the morning when the sun was just coming up. Now it was afternoon, and the tall buildings of the city were getting closer. Emma looked out the window. She had never seen so many cars before. In her town, there were maybe 2 or 3 cars on the main street at one time. Here, there were hundreds. They moved fast, changing lanes, honking their horns. Everything felt big and scary and exciting all at the same time. "Are you nervous, mija?" her mother asked in Spanish. Maria always spoke Spanish when she was worried or tired. Emma nodded. "Yes, Mama, very nervous." Her mother reached back and squeezed her hand. "You will do wonderful. Mrs. Hartwell says you are ready. She believes in you." Emma thought about Mrs. Hartwell. The old woman lived in a small house at the end of Oak Street. Her house always smelled like tea and old books. Mrs. Hartwell had been teaching Emma to play violin for 5 years now, ever since Emma was 5 years old. The lessons happened in Mrs. Hartwell's living room. There was an old piano in the corner that nobody played anymore. The walls had pictures of musicians and concert halls from long ago. Mrs. Hartwell would sit in her big chair with the soft cushions, and Emma would stand in front of her and play. Mrs. Hartwell couldn't see very well anymore. She had gotten sick a few years before Emma met her. The sickness was called a stroke. It made one side of her face droop a little, and it took away most of her vision. But Mrs. Hartwell always said she could see the music. She could hear every note Emma played, every mistake, every beautiful moment. "I don't need my eyes to know if you're playing from your heart," Mrs. Hartwell would say. "I can hear it in the sound." Emma remembered the day Mrs. Hartwell told her about the audition. It was 3 months ago. Emma had just finished playing a difficult piece by Bach. She was proud because she had practiced it for weeks and finally got it right. "Emma," Mrs. Hartwell said, "I need to tell you something important." Emma put down her violin and listened. "There is a music school in the city. It is called the Steinhardt Music Academy. It is one of the best schools in the country. The best teachers work there. The best students study there." Mrs. Hartwell paused. "I think you should audition." Emma's heart jumped. She had heard about schools like this. They were for rich kids. Kids who had been playing since they were babies. Kids who had famous parents or special connections. "But Mrs. Hartwell," Emma said quietly, "my family doesn't have much money, and I only learned from you. The other kids there probably had many teachers." Mrs. Hartwell smiled. It was a sad smile and a proud smile at the same time. "Emma, I'm going to tell you something I don't talk about much. A long time ago, I was a student at that school. I studied under a man named Victor Kozlov. He was the best violin teacher in the world. Maybe he still is." Emma's eyes got big. She had never known this about her teacher. "Maestro Kozlov taught me everything, but then I got sick and I couldn't play anymore. I lost touch with him. I lost touch with that whole world. But I never stopped loving music. And now I teach you." Mrs. Hartwell leaned forward. "You have something special, Emma, something I rarely see. You don't just play the notes. You feel them. You understand them. I think you are ready to audition." That conversation changed everything. Mrs. Hartwell helped Emma's mother fill out the application. She wrote a letter of recommendation. She made phone calls. She used connections she hadn't used in 30 years, and now, 3 months later, Emma was in this car, driving to the city, going to audition at one of the most important music schools in the country. The car turned off the highway. The buildings got even taller. People walked on the sidewalks wearing nice clothes. Emma looked down at her own dress. Her mother had bought it at a thrift store last week. It was pretty, but it was also someone else's old dress. Emma wondered if the other kids at the audition would notice. "We're almost there," her mother said. Her voice sounded nervous too. Emma's stomach felt tight. She had been practicing for months. Every day after school, she would go to Mrs. Hartwell's house and practice for 2 hours. On weekends, she practiced even more. Her fingers had calluses from pressing the strings so much. Her shoulders sometimes hurt from holding the violin for so long. Mrs. Hartwell had taught her something special for the audition. Something unusual, but Emma wasn't sure if she would be brave enough to do it. The car pulled up in front of a huge building. It was made of white stone and had tall columns at the entrance. There were wide steps leading up to big wooden doors. The building looked like something from a movie. Emma had never seen anything so grand in real life. Her mother parked the car in a lot across the street. They got out. The air in the city smelled different from home. It smelled like exhaust and food and lots of people all living close together. Emma picked up her violin case. Her mother took her other hand. Together they walked across the street and up those wide steps. Emma's legs felt shaky. Each step felt like it took forever. They pushed open the heavy doors and walked inside. The lobby was enormous. The ceiling was so high that Emma had to tilt her head back to see it. There was a huge chandelier hanging from the center, with hundreds of crystals that sparkled in the light. The floor was made of marble and their footsteps echoed when they walked. Other families were there too. Emma counted at least 15 other kids who looked like they were there for auditions. They all had their instruments. Some had violins like Emma. Others had cellos or flutes or clarinets. The other kids looked confident. They wore expensive clothes. Their instrument cases were new and shiny. They stood with their parents and talked in quiet voices about their previous performances and their famous teachers. Emma heard one mother talking to another. "Benjamin has been studying at the preparatory school since he was 4, the woman said proudly. He's performed at Carnegie Hall twice already. This audition is really just a formality, the other mother nodded. Sophia has been working with a private coach who studied under Perlman. We've invested over $100,000 in her education so far, but it's worth it. Emma felt smaller and smaller. $100,000? That was more money than her mother made in several years. How could Emma compete with kids like this? Her mother must have felt her fear because she squeezed her hand tight. Don't listen to them, Mija. You have something they don't have. You have passion. You have heart. A woman with a clipboard walked to the center of the lobby. She clapped her hands to get everyone's attention. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Steinhardt Music Academy. My name is Mrs. Patterson, and I will be coordinating today's auditions. Everyone got quiet and listened. We have 20 students auditioning today for 10 spots in our junior program. The auditions will be held in the main auditorium. You will play for a panel of 3 judges led by our director, Maestro Victor Kozlov. Emma heard several parents gasp or whisper when they heard that name. Even here, Maestro Kozlov was famous, Mrs. Patterson continued. Each student will play one prepared piece of their choosing. The piece should be no longer than 5 minutes. After you play, the judges may ask you questions or request that you play something else. Please wait in the lobby until your name is called. She started calling names in alphabetical order. Benjamin Ashford. The boy named Benjamin walked forward with his mother. They disappeared through a set of doors on the left side of the lobby. Everyone else waited. Emma could hear her own heartbeat. It was so loud she wondered if other people could hear it too. The minutes felt like hours. One by one, students were called. They would disappear through those doors, and then 20 or 30 minutes later, they would come back. Some came back smiling. Others came back crying. One boy came back and threw his violin case on the floor in anger. His father had to calm him down. Emma watched each student return and tried to guess how they did. The waiting was the hardest part. Her hands got sweatier and sweatier. She wiped them on her dress over and over. Finally, after what felt like forever, Mrs. Patterson looked at her clipboard and called out, Emma Rodriguez. This was it. Emma stood up. Her legs wobbled a little. Her mother gave her a hug. Remember everything Mrs. Hartwell taught you, she whispered. Play from your heart. Emma nodded. She picked up her violin case and walked toward those big doors. Mrs. Patterson held one door open for her and smiled. But it was a professional smile, not a warm one. Emma walked through the door and into a long hallway. Her footsteps echoed on the tile floor. At the end of the hallway was another door. Mrs. Patterson pointed to it. The auditorium is through there. Walk to the center of the stage and wait for Maestro Kozlov to address you. Good luck. Emma walked to the door. She put her hand on the handle. It felt cold. She took a deep breath, the way Mrs. Hartwell had taught her. Before you play, breathe, Mrs. Hartwell always said. Let the air fill your lungs. Let your mind become calm. Emma breathed in slowly. Then she breathed out. Then she opened the door. The auditorium was massive. There were rows and rows of red velvet seats, enough for maybe 500 people. But the seats were all empty. The only people in the whole huge room were 3 adults sitting in the front row, right in the center. The stage was raised up high. There were bright lights shining down on it. Emma walked up the steps on the side of the stage. Her violin case felt heavy in her hand. The stage floor was made of wood, and it creaked a little when she walked on it. She walked to the center of the stage, just like Mrs. Patterson had told her. The lights were so bright that she could barely see the 3 judges. But she could see their outlines. The person in the middle was a man with silver hair. That had to be Maestro Kozlov. Emma stood there in the center of the stage under the bright lights in her thrift store dress, holding her old scratched violin case. She waited. The man in the middle stood up. He was tall and thin. He wore a black suit and a crisp white shirt. Even from far away, Emma could see his eyes. They were blue and sharp. They looked at her like they could see right through her. "Name," he said. His voice was deep and had an accent. Russian, maybe, or somewhere from Eastern Europe. "Emma Rodriguez," she said. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. "Age?" 10 years old, sir. Where do you study?" Emma swallowed. This was the question she was afraid of. "I study in my hometown, sir. With a private teacher." "What is the name of this teacher?" "Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell, sir." Maestro Kozlov wrote something down on a paper. He didn't react to the name at all. Emma wondered if he even remembered Mrs. Hartwell. It had been 30 years, after all. "What will you play for us today?" he asked. "Vivaldi's Winter, sir." "From the Four Seasons," the maestro nodded. "Proceed." That was it. No good luck, no take your time, just proceed like she was a machine he was turning on. Emma opened her violin case. Her hands were shaking so much that she almost dropped the bow. She took out her violin. It wasn't fancy like the violins the other kids probably had. It had scratches and the varnish was worn in some places. But Mrs. Hartwell had helped her mother buy it at a pawn shop, and Mrs. Hartwell had made sure it was a good instrument, even if it was old. Emma lifted the violin and put it against her shoulder. The wood felt familiar against her skin. She had held this violin thousands of times. She knew every inch of it. She raised her bow. She took one more breath. Then she began to play. The first notes of Winter came out clear and strong. Emma played the opening, which was fast and energetic like wind and snow. Her fingers moved across the strings, finding each note. She had practiced this piece so many times that her fingers knew where to go without her even thinking about it. She played the slow section in the middle, where the music becomes soft and gentle like someone sitting by a fire while snow falls outside. Emma closed her eyes for this part. She pictured the scene. She felt the warmth of the imaginary fire. She felt the cold of the imaginary snow. Then came the final section, fast again, wild and powerful. Emma's bow flew across the strings. She played every note exactly right. Not too fast, not too slow. Just the way Mrs. Hartwell had taught her. When she finished, she lowered her violin. She opened her eyes. The bright lights made her blink. She looked out at the 3 judges, trying to see their faces, trying to guess what they thought. There was silence. Nobody said anything. Nobody moved. Then Maestro Kozlov stood up. He walked toward the stage slowly. His footsteps echoed in the empty auditorium. He stopped at the bottom of the stairs leading up to the stage. He looked up at Emma. His face was cold. His eyes showed nothing. And when he spoke, his words cut through Emma like ice. "Adequate technique," Maestro Kozlov said. His voice was flat and cold. "Pedestrian interpretation." Emma felt her heart sink. She didn't know what pedestrian meant exactly, but she knew it wasn't good. The way he said it made it sound like an insult. The maestro walked up the first 2 steps. Now he was closer. Emma could see his face clearly. There were deep lines around his eyes and mouth. His silver hair was combed back perfectly. Everything about him looked sharp and exact. "You play the notes, child," he continued, "but you do not feel the music." Emma wanted to say that she did feel the music. She felt it more than anything. But her throat was tight and she couldn't make words come out. Maestro Kozlov turned away from Emma. He looked at the other 2 judges. The woman on the left had kind eyes and short black hair. The man on the right was older with a gray beard. Both of them looked uncomfortable. "This is what happens," the maestro said, speaking to them but loud enough for Emma to hear every word. "When students learn from mediocre teachers in provincial towns, they memorize patterns. They learn the mechanics. But they lack true artistry. They lack soul. Each word felt like a slap. Emma's eyes started to burn. She could feel tears building up, but she refused to let them fall. She bit the inside of her cheek hard. The small pain helped her focus. It helped keep the tears back. Mrs. Hartwell wasn't mediocre. Mrs. Hartwell was the best teacher Emma could ever imagine. Mrs. Hartwell had taught her everything. Mrs. Hartwell believed in her. The maestro turned back to Emma. "This is a waste of time," he said. "You are not ready for this institution. Perhaps in a few years, with proper instruction, you might. May I try something different?" The words came out of Emma's mouth before she could stop them. Her voice was small and shaky, but she had said them. She had interrupted the great Maestro Kozlov. The maestro stopped talking. His eyebrows went up. The other two judges looked surprised. In the empty auditorium, Emma could hear someone in the back shift in their seat. She hadn't realized anyone else was in the room. "What did you say?" the maestro asked. His voice was dangerous now. Emma's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her ears. But she had already started. She couldn't stop now. "May I try something different, sir?" "Please." The maestro stared at her. His blue eyes were cold and sharp. "You wish to waste more of our time?" "Just a few minutes, sir, please." The woman judge with the kind eyes leaned forward. "Victor," she said gently. "Let her try." The maestro looked at the woman. She looked back at him. Something passed between them. Some kind of conversation without words. Finally, the maestro made a gesture with his hand. It was a dismissive wave, like he was swatting a fly. "If you wish to further demonstrate your limitations, proceed." Emma put her violin down carefully on a chair at the side of the stage. She walked to her violin case, which was still open on the floor. She reached into the small pocket on the inside lid. Her fingers found what she was looking for. It was a silk scarf, black and soft. Mrs. Hartwell had given it to her 6 months ago. Emma remembered that day clearly. It was winter, and snow was falling outside Mrs. Hartwell's windows. Emma had just finished playing a piece, and Mrs. Hartwell had been quiet for a long time. "Emma," Mrs. Hartwell finally said, "I want to teach you something new, something I learned a long time ago." Emma had sat down on the footstool next to Mrs. Hartwell's chair. "When I lost my vision," Mrs. Hartwell continued, "I thought my life in music was over. I couldn't read sheet music anymore. I couldn't see my fingers on the strings. I couldn't see the bow. Everything I had relied on was gone." Mrs. Hartwell paused. Her hands were folded in her lap. The left one had a slight tremor from the stroke. "But then I realized something," she said. "I didn't need to see the music. I could hear it. I could feel it. When you play the violin, it vibrates. You can feel those vibrations in your shoulder, in your jaw, in your chest. The instrument talks to you through touch, not just through sound." Mrs. Hartwell had pulled out a black scarf from the drawer in her side table. "I want you to practice something for me. I want you to practice playing Blindfolded." Emma had been surprised. "Why?" "Because when you can't see, you have to trust yourself completely. You have to feel where your fingers go. You have to hear every tiny sound. You become more connected to the music. You stop thinking about the mechanics and you start feeling the art." So Emma had practiced. At first it was scary and difficult. She missed notes. She couldn't find the right positions. But slowly, over weeks and months, it got easier. She started to understand what Mrs. Hartwell meant. When she couldn't see, she heard things differently. She felt things differently. The music became bigger and more alive. Now, standing on the stage at the Steinhardt Music Academy, Emma held that black scarf in her hands. She turned to face the three judges. "At home," she said, her voice stronger now. "My teacher told me that real musicians don't just play with their fingers and eyes. They play with their soul." Emma lifted the scarf. "She taught me to practice blindfolded, to feel every vibration, to hear every sound, to connect with the music in a deeper way." Emma could see the maestro's face getting red. His jaw was tight. "May I play for you again, sir?" Emma asked. "This way?" A sound went through the auditorium. It was quiet, but Emma heard it. People whispering. Someone gasping. Emma glanced to the back and realized there were maybe 5 or 6 other people sitting in the back rows. Other teachers, maybe, or staff members. They were all looking at her with wide eyes. The woman judge, the one with kind eyes, leaned forward even more. "Victor," she said, "let her try. What harm could it do?" But Maestro Kozlov's face had gone from red to almost purple. He walked up the rest of the stairs onto the stage. He walked right up to Emma. He was tall, and Emma had to tilt her head back to look at him. "This is a gimmick," he said. His voice was hard and angry. "A desperate attempt to hide your lack of skill with theatrics. This is not a circus. This is a serious institution." Emma took a step back. He was so close and so angry, but she held the scarf tight in her hand. The other male judge stood up too. "Victor, I think we should—" "No." The maestro's voice was sharp. He turned to look at the other judges. "This is exactly what is wrong with music education today. Everyone thinks they need a trick, a gimmick, something to make them special. But real musicianship comes from years of disciplined study, from proper instruction, from dedication to the craft." He turned back to Emma. "Your teacher, whoever she is, has filled your head with nonsense about feeling and soul. But feeling without technique is worthless. Soul without skill is meaningless." Emma felt something change inside her. Yes, she was scared. Yes, this man was intimidating and powerful and important. But he was wrong. He was wrong about Mrs. Hartwell, and he was wrong about her. "My teacher was your student," Emma said quietly. The maestro froze. "What? Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell. She studied under you 30 years ago. She says you were the best teacher she ever had." The color drained from Maestro Kozlov's face. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He stared at Emma like he was seeing a ghost. The woman judge stood up quickly. "Eleanor Hartwell? Eleanor is alive." "Victor, I thought she had died," the maestro said. His voice was barely a whisper. "Years ago, I heard she had passed away." Emma shook her head. "She had a stroke. She lost most of her vision. But she's alive. She lives in my town. She teaches me." The maestro took a step back. He looked confused and shocked and something else. Something that looked almost like pain. His hand went to his forehead. He turned away from Emma and walked a few steps. His shoulders were tense. The auditorium was completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Finally, the woman judge broke the silence. "Let her play, Victor." The maestro didn't turn around. He just stood there with his back to everyone. "Victor," the woman said again, her voice gentle but firm. "Let the child play." Several long seconds passed. Then the maestro's shoulders sagged just a little. "Fine," he said. He still didn't turn around. "Play your trick. Show us your gimmick." Emma's hands were shaking again, but not from fear this time. From something else. Determination maybe, or anger, or both. She walked back to the chair where she had left her violin. She picked it up. She also picked up the bow. She walked back to the center of the stage. The maestro had turned around now. His face was hard to read. The anger was still there, but there was something else too. Curiosity maybe, or worry. Emma lifted the black scarf. "My teacher wanted me to understand music the way she does now," Emma said. "In pure sound and feeling, without the distraction of sight." She placed the scarf over her eyes. She tied it in the back, making sure it was tight and secure. The world went dark. The bright stage lights disappeared. The faces of the judges disappeared. The huge empty auditorium disappeared. All that was left was the feeling of the violin against her shoulder, the weight of the bow in her hand, the slight roughness of the strings under her left fingertips. Emma took a breath. A deep, slow breath the way Mrs. Hartwell had taught her. In her mind, she heard Mrs. Hartwell's voice. "Trust yourself, Emma. Trust your training. Trust your heart. The music is already inside you. You don't need your eyes to let it out." Emma raised her bow to the strings. She found the position without looking, because her body knew where it should be. She had done this hundreds of times in Mrs. Hartwell's living room. But she wasn't going to play Vivaldi's Winter again. That piece was good, but it wasn't enough. Not for this moment. Not after what the maestro had said. Emma was going to play something bigger, something harder, something that would prove once and for all that Mrs. Hartwell had taught her well. She was going to play Bach's Chaconne. The Chaconne was one of the most difficult pieces ever written for solo violin. It was 15 minutes long. It had passages that seemed almost impossible to play. Most professional musicians practiced it for years before performing it in public. Emma had learned it over the last 3 months. Mrs. Hartwell had taught it to her bit by bit, measure by measure. "This piece," Mrs. Hartwell had said, "is the Mount Everest of violin music. But you can climb it, Emma. I believe you can." Standing blindfolded on the stage, Emma positioned her fingers for the first chord. She took one more breath. Then she began to play. The first notes filled the auditorium, deep and powerful. Emma played the opening theme, which was built on a descending bass line. Her fingers pressed the strings in double stops, playing 2 notes at once. The sound was rich and full. She couldn't see anything, but she could hear everything. She could hear the acoustics of the big auditorium. She could hear how the sound traveled and echoed. She adjusted her playing to match the space, making some notes louder, letting others ring longer. Her left hand moved up and down the fingerboard. In her mind, she could see the positions even though her eyes were covered. First position, third position, fifth position. Her muscle memory knew exactly where to go. The bow in her right hand moved with precision. Fast bow for quick notes, slow bow for long notes. She changed the pressure and speed constantly, creating dynamics that made the music come alive. Emma played the first variation. The notes got faster and more complex. Her fingers flew across the strings. Each note had to be perfectly in tune because there was no piano or orchestra to hide any mistakes. It was just Emma and her violin. In the audience, Maestro Kozlov had sat down. His hands gripped the armrests of his seat. His eyes were wide. His mouth was slightly open. The woman judge had tears running down her face. She wasn't wiping them away. She just sat there, crying, listening. The male judge was leaning forward, his elbows on his knees, his face intense with concentration. The people in the back rows had all moved forward. They were sitting on the edges of their seats. Emma played on, unaware of any of this. She was lost in the music. The blindfold had done exactly what Mrs. Hartwell said it would do. It had removed all distractions. There was no stage, no judges, no pressure. There was only the music. She played the brutal passages in the middle of the piece, where the notes came fast and furious, where the bow had to bounce on the strings in rapid spiccato. She played the tender moments where the music became soft and gentle, almost like a lullaby. She played the triumphant sections where the sound swelled and filled the entire space. Her body moved with the music. She swayed, she bent. She rose up on her toes during the high notes. The violin and her body were one instrument. The piece moved through its many variations. Each one was different. Each one told a different part of the story. Loss, hope, struggle, joy, despair, triumph. The chaconne contained all of human emotion, and Emma poured her whole heart into every measure. Sweat began to form on her forehead. Her left arm started to ache from holding the violin for so long. Her right shoulder burned from the constant bow movement. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. The music carried her forward. She reached the final section. The music returned to the opening theme, but transformed now. Deeper, more meaningful. Like coming home after a long journey. Emma played the last variation with everything she had left. The final chords rang out, strong and clear and true. Then she played the very last note. She let it sustain, let it fill the auditorium, let it fade slowly into silence. She lowered her violin. She lowered her bow. But she didn't remove the blindfold yet. She stood there in the darkness, breathing hard, feeling the sweat on her face, feeling her heart racing. In the audience, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The silence was so complete it felt like the whole world had stopped. Emma stood on the stage, still blindfolded, her chest rising and falling with each breath. Her arms felt heavy. Her fingers were sore. But she felt something else, too. Something light and free. She had done it. She had played the chaconne from beginning to end without a single mistake. Slowly, she reached up with one hand and pulled the black scarf away from her eyes. The bright lights made her blink. For a moment, everything was just white light and blurry shapes. Then her vision cleared. The first thing she saw was Maestro Kozlov. He was still sitting in his seat in the front row, but he looked completely different now. His face wasn't angry anymore. His mouth was open slightly. His eyes were wide and shining. He looked shocked. He looked amazed. The woman judge next to him had her hands over her mouth. Tears were streaming down her face. She was shaking her head slowly like she couldn't believe what she had just heard. The male judge was wiping his eyes with a handkerchief. His face was red. In the back rows, the other people in the auditorium were standing up. One of them, a young woman with blonde hair, started clapping. Then another person joined her. Then another. Soon all 6 or 7 people in the back were clapping and some were even cheering. Emma didn't know what to do. She had never had anyone clap for her like this before. In her town, she had played in a few small recitals at the community center. People clapped politely. But this was different. This felt real and powerful. Then Maestro Kozlov stood up. For a moment, Emma was scared again. What if he was still angry? What if he thought she was showing off? But the maestro didn't look angry. He walked toward the stage slowly. His legs seemed a bit unsteady, like he was dizzy or tired. He climbed the stairs onto the stage. Each step seemed to take effort. Emma watched him come closer. She held her violin in one hand and the bow in the other. She didn't move. She barely breathed. The maestro walked right up to her. Then he did something that shocked Emma more than anything else that had happened that day. He got down on his knees. This old, famous, important man knelt down on the stage floor so that his face was level with Emma's face. His eyes were wet. He reached out and put his hands on Emma's shoulders. His hands were shaking. "Who are you, child?" he asked. His voice was rough with emotion. "Who are you, really?" Emma's voice came out small and scared. "I'm Emma Rodriguez, sir. I'm from—" "No," the maestro interrupted. "I mean, who taught you to play like this? How did you learn this?" "Mrs. Hartwell taught me, sir. I told you. She was your student." "Eleanor Hartwell." The maestro's hands tightened on Emma's shoulders. Not hard, but like he was holding onto something precious that might disappear. "Eleanor," he whispered. "My Eleanor. She's alive. She's really alive." A tear ran down his cheek. Emma had never seen a grown man cry before, especially not a man like this. It made her feel strange, sad and uncomfortable, but also like something important was happening. The woman judge had come up onto the stage too. She stood next to them. "Victor," she said gently, "what happened with Eleanor? Why did you think she was dead?" The maestro didn't look at her. He kept looking at Emma. "It was 30 years ago," he said. "Eleanor was my best student. She had so much talent, so much passion. She understood music in a way that few people ever do." He paused. "She was also my friend, my dear friend." He let go of Emma's shoulders and sat back on his heels. He looked at the floor. After she graduated, she went to play with an orchestra in Europe. We wrote letters for a while, but then the letters stopped. I tried to find her. I called. I wrote. Nothing. He looked up at Emma again. Then about 10 years ago, someone told me she had died. A car accident, they said. I believed them. I mourned her. But she didn't die, Emma said. She had a stroke. It happened 5 years ago. That's what she told me. The maestro put his hand over his face. His shoulders shook. The woman judge knelt down next to him and put her hand on his back. Emma didn't know what to say. She felt like she had opened a door and found a whole room full of sadness that had been locked away for years. After a minute, the maestro took a deep breath and lowered his hand. He looked at Emma again. His face was wet with tears, but his eyes were clearer now. Tell me about her, please, tell me everything. Emma sat down on the stage floor. Her legs were tired from standing for so long. The maestro and the woman judge sat down too, right there on the stage. The male judge came up and joined them. It was strange, all of them sitting on the floor like that, but it felt right somehow. Mrs. Hartwell lives in a small house on Oak Street, Emma began. It's a white house with blue shutters. There are flowers in the front yard that she can't see anymore. But she knows they're there because she planted them years ago. The maestro listened carefully to every word. He nodded like he was picturing it in his mind. She has a living room with an old piano in the corner, Emma continued, and pictures on the walls. Pictures of concert halls and orchestras and musicians. Some of the pictures are old and faded. I gave her some of those pictures, the maestro said quietly. When she graduated, I wanted her to remember her time here. Emma smiled a little. She sits in a big chair with soft cushions. Her house always smells like tea. She drinks tea all day long. Earl Grey, she says. It's her favorite. It always was, the maestro said. He smiled too, but it was a sad smile. She used to drink it during our lessons. I would tell her to put the cup down before she spilled it on her violin. Emma laughed softly. She still drinks tea during my lessons too. She says it helps her concentrate. Tell me about the stroke, the woman judge said gently. What happened? Emma's smile faded. I don't know all the details. Mrs. Hartwell doesn't like to talk about it much. But she told me it happened 5 years ago. She was teaching a student and suddenly she couldn't move her left side. Someone called an ambulance. She was in the hospital for a long time. Emma picked at a loose thread on her dress. When she came out of the hospital, she couldn't play violin anymore. Her left hand doesn't work right, and she lost most of her vision. She can see light and dark and shadows, but not details. Not faces or words or anything like that. How does she teach then? The male judge asked. He had a deep voice and a kind face. She listens, Emma said simply. She hears everything. When I play a wrong note, she knows immediately. When I play with the right emotion, she knows that too. She says she doesn't need her eyes to hear the music. The maestro was shaking his head. That sounds like Eleanor. Always finding a way. Always refusing to give up. She talks about you sometimes, Emma said to the maestro. She says you taught her everything she knows. She says you were strict but fair. She says you pushed her to be better than she thought she could be. I did push her, the maestro said. Maybe too hard sometimes. But she was so talented. I wanted her to reach her full potential. He looked down at his hands. When I thought she had died, I felt such guilt. I wondered if I had pushed her so hard that it drove her away. If my harsh methods had made her want to escape from music altogether. No, Emma said quickly. She loves music more than anything. She told me that teaching me is what keeps her going. She says music saved her life after the stroke. Even though she couldn't play anymore, she could still hear it. She could still teach it. She could still be part of it. The woman judge wiped her eyes again. That's beautiful, she said. Emma nodded. Mrs. Hartwell is the best teacher in the world. I know she's not famous like the teachers here. I know she doesn't have a big school or a lot of students. But she taught me everything. She taught me how to play. She taught me how to listen. She taught me how to feel the music. The blindfold, the maestro said. That was her idea? Yes, sir. She gave me the scarf 6 months ago. She said that when she lost her vision, she thought her life in music was over. But then she realized she could still hear and feel the music. Maybe even better than before because she wasn't distracted by seeing. Emma picked up the black scarf that was lying next to her. She wanted me to understand what that was like. So she taught me to practice blindfolded. It was hard at first. I missed notes all the time. But she was patient. She helped me learn to trust my fingers and my ears. And you learned the chaconne this way? The male judge asked. Blindfolded? Emma nodded. Some of it. Not all of it. But Mrs. Hartwell said that once I could play it blindfolded, I would really understand it. And she was right. When I play without seeing, the music feels different, bigger, more alive. The maestro was quiet for a long moment. He stared at Emma like he was seeing something he had lost long ago and finally found again. You played it perfectly, he finally said. Not a single mistake. Every note in tune. Every rhythm precise. But more than that, you understood it. You felt it. The emotion. The story. Everything. He turned to look at the other two judges. In 40 years of teaching, I have heard thousands of students play that piece. Maybe 3 or 4 of them truly understood it. This child understands it. The woman judge nodded. It was extraordinary. The male judge agreed. I've never heard anything like it from someone so young. The maestro looked back at Emma. How old did you say you were? 10, sir. 10 years old, he repeated like he was trying to make sense of an impossible math problem. And you've been studying for how long? 5 years, sir. Since I was 5. Only 5 years. The maestro shook his head in amazement. Eleanor taught you all this in only 5 years? Emma nodded. We practice every day. 2 hours after school, 4 hours on Saturdays, sometimes more. And your mother? Where is she? She's waiting in the lobby, sir. She works 2 jobs to pay for my lessons and my violin. She drives me to Mrs. Hartwell's house every day. The maestro stood up. His knees cracked a little. The woman and male judge stood up too. Emma stood up as well, holding her violin carefully. Emma Rodriguez, the maestro said formally. His voice was different now, stronger, more official. This panel has made a decision regarding your audition. Emma's heart started beating fast again. This was it. This was the moment when she would find out if she got in or not. The maestro looked at the other 2 judges. They both nodded. Then he looked back at Emma. You are accepted into the Steinhardt Music Academy Junior Program. Full scholarship. You will study here for the next 8 years through your high school graduation. Emma's mouth fell open. She couldn't speak. She couldn't breathe. Furthermore, the maestro continued, I would like to take you on as my personal student, if you are willing. Now Emma's eyes filled with tears. Yes, she whispered. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, the woman judge smiled. Welcome to Steinhardt, Emma. The male judge reached out and shook Emma's hand. We're lucky to have you. But the maestro wasn't done. "There is one condition," he said. "One requirement." Emma's happiness stuttered a little. "What is it, sir?" "I want to meet Eleanor. I want to see her again. I want to—" His voice caught. "I want to apologize for losing touch. I want to thank her for keeping music alive in her heart even after everything she went through. And I want to ask her to consult on your training. She knows you better than anyone. She understands your abilities. I need her help to teach you properly." Fresh tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. But these were happy tears. "She would love that, sir. She talks about you all the time. She misses you." The maestro pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to Emma. "Don't cry, child. This is a happy day." Emma wiped her eyes and laughed. "I know, I'm just so happy. I can't believe this is real." "It's real," the woman judge said. She put her arm around Emma's shoulders. "You earned this with your talent and your hard work. And with excellent teaching," the maestro added. "Eleanor always was a gifted teacher. I'm glad she found a way to continue even after her stroke." The male judge looked at his watch. "We should let Emma go tell her mother the good news. There's probably a very nervous woman in the lobby right now." Emma gasped. "Mama, I forgot about Mama. She must be so worried." Everyone laughed. The maestro walked with Emma toward the stage stairs. "Go," he said gently. "Go tell your mother. Then come back here. We have paperwork to fill out, and I want your teacher's phone number and address. I will visit her next week." Emma practically ran down the stairs. She ran down the long hallway. She burst through the doors into the lobby. Her mother was pacing back and forth. When she saw Emma, she rushed toward her. "Mija, what happened? You were in there so long. I was so worried." Emma threw her arms around her mother. "Mama, I got in. Full scholarship. And Maestro Kozlov wants to teach me himself." Maria pulled back to look at her daughter's face. "What, really? Oh, Mija." She hugged Emma tight and spun her around. Both of them were crying and laughing at the same time. The other families in the lobby stared at them. Some looked happy for them. Others looked jealous. But Emma didn't care. She was too happy to care about anything. Mrs. Patterson, the woman with the clipboard, came over to them. She was smiling. "Congratulations, Emma. We'll need you to come back to the auditorium to fill out some enrollment forms." Emma and her mother followed Mrs. Patterson back through the doors. As they walked down the hallway, Emma thought about Mrs. Hartwell. She couldn't wait to tell her the news. She couldn't wait to tell her that Maestro Kozlov remembered her and wanted to see her again. Mrs. Hartwell always said that music connects people across time and distance. Today, Emma had seen that it was true. Her music had built a bridge between her teacher's past and her own future. And that bridge was going to carry all of them forward together. The next hour passed in a blur. Emma and her mother sat at a table in a small office near the auditorium. Mrs. Patterson brought them stack after stack of papers. Enrollment forms, scholarship agreements, medical forms, emergency contact forms. Maria's hands shook as she signed each paper. She kept looking at Emma with tears in her eyes and a huge smile on her face. Emma kept squeezing her mother's hand, still unable to believe this was really happening. Maestro Kozlov came in while they were signing the papers. He pulled up a chair and sat across from them. He looked different now, more relaxed. The harsh, cold expression was gone from his face. "Mrs. Rodriguez," he said to Maria, "your daughter is extremely talented. I want you to know that we will take good care of her here." Maria nodded. "Thank you, Maestro. Thank you so much. This is a dream come true for Emma. I need Eleanor's contact information," he said. "Her phone number and address." Emma pulled out her mother's phone and found Mrs. Hartwell's information. She wrote it down on a piece of paper and handed it to the maestro. Her handwriting was messy because her hand was still shaking with excitement. The maestro took the paper and looked at it for a long moment. He traced his finger over the address. "Oak Street," he murmured. "A white house with blue shutters." "That's right," Emma said. "You'll like it there. It's peaceful and quiet, and Mrs. Hartwell makes really good tea." The maestro smiled. It was the first real smile Emma had seen on his face. It made him look younger and kinder. "I remember her tea. She always made it too strong, but she refused to admit it." Emma giggled. "She still makes it too strong. I have to add a lot of sugar." "When does the program start?" Maria asked Mrs. Patterson. "The fall semester begins in September," Mrs. Patterson explained. "That gives you 3 months to prepare." We'll send you a welcome packet with all the information. Class schedules, uniform requirements, supply lists, everything. Uniform? Emma asked. She had never worn a uniform before. Yes, all students wear uniforms. Navy blue skirt or pants, white shirt, navy blazer. We'll include the information about where to purchase them. Mrs. Patterson made notes on her clipboard. And housing? Maria asked nervously. Emma lives 300 miles away. How will she? We have dormitories for students who live far away, Mrs. Patterson said. The junior program students live in Baker Hall. It's a supervised residence with house parents and a full staff. The scholarship covers room and board as well as tuition. Emma's excitement dimmed a little. She would have to live away from home? Away from her mother? Maria must have seen the worry on Emma's face. She squeezed her hand. It will be okay, mija. You can come home on weekends and holidays, and I'll come visit you. Actually, Maestro Kozlov interrupted, I would like to propose something different. Everyone looked at him. Emma should stay in her home for now. She should continue her lessons with Eleanor for the summer. I will come to visit and observe. In the fall, when the program starts, then she can move into the dormitory. He looked at Emma. This will give you time to prepare mentally and emotionally. And it will give me time to coordinate with Eleanor about your training. Emma felt relief wash over her. 3 more months at home. 3 more months with her mother and Mrs. Hartwell before everything changed. That's a wonderful idea, Maria said. Thank you, Maestro. Mrs. Patterson made more notes. I'll arrange that. Emma will be considered a commuter student for the summer program. After all the papers were signed and all the questions were answered, Mrs. Patterson walked Emma and her mother back to the lobby. The other families were gone now. The auditions must have finished. Congratulations again, Emma, Mrs. Patterson said. We'll be in touch soon with more information. Emma and her mother walked out of the building and down those wide stone steps. The afternoon sun was bright. The city was busy with people and cars. But everything seemed more beautiful now. The buildings looked less scary. The noise seemed more like music. They got into their old car. Maria started the engine. It made its usual rattling sound, but even that seemed cheerful today. Can we call Mrs. Hartwell? Emma asked. I want to tell her right now. We'll do better than that, Maria said. We'll go see her. It's a long drive, but we'll get there by dinner time. They drove out of the city and onto the highway. The sun was starting to sink lower in the sky, painting everything golden. Emma leaned her head against the car window and watched the scenery pass by. Her mind was racing with thoughts. She was going to study at Steinhardt Music Academy. She was going to be taught by Maestro Victor Kozlov. She was going to live in a dormitory and wear a uniform and learn from the best teachers in the country. But more than any of that, she kept thinking about the look on the maestro's face when she mentioned Mrs. Hartwell. The shock, the grief, the joy. It was like Emma had given him back something he thought he had lost forever. Mama, Emma said quietly, do you think Mrs. Hartwell will be happy about the maestro wanting to visit her? Maria thought about this. I think she'll be very happy. Why, I don't know. It's been 30 years. Maybe she's changed. Maybe he's changed. Maybe it will be awkward. Maybe, Maria agreed. But maybe it will be wonderful. Sometimes old friends need to find each other again. They drove in comfortable silence for a while. The highway unwound before them. Emma thought about what the maestro had said. That he thought Mrs. Hartwell was dead. That he had mourned her. Emma tried to imagine what that must have been like. To think your friend was gone forever. To carry that sadness for years. And then to suddenly find out they were alive. It must have felt like a miracle. The sun set as they drove. The sky turned purple and orange and pink. Stars started to appear. Emma dozed off for a while, tired from the emotional day. When she woke up, they were pulling into their small town. The streetlights were on. Everything looked familiar and comforting. The gas station on the corner. The grocery store. The library. The park with the old playground. Maria drove down Main Street and turned onto Oak Street. 3 houses down, she pulled into a driveway. Mrs. Hartwell's white house with blue shutters looked cozy in the darkness. Warm yellow light glowed from the windows. Emma grabbed her violin case and jumped out of the car. She ran up the front steps and knocked on the door. Maria followed behind her, smiling at her daughter's excitement. The door opened. Mrs. Hartwell stood there in her usual cardigan sweater and comfortable pants. Her gray hair was pulled back in a bun. Her eyes, which couldn't see clearly anymore, somehow still looked wise and kind. "Emma?" she said. "Is that you? Why are you knocking? You usually just come in." "Mrs. Hartwell." Emma couldn't contain herself anymore. "I got in. I got accepted. Full scholarship. And you'll never believe what happened." Mrs. Hartwell's face broke into a huge smile. Come in, come in. Tell me everything." They went inside. The house smelled like Earl Grey tea, just like always. Mrs. Hartwell led them to the living room. She moved carefully, one hand trailing along the wall to guide herself, but she knew her house so well that she barely seemed to need help. Emma and Maria sat on the couch. Mrs. Hartwell sat in her big chair with the soft cushions. She leaned forward eagerly. "Tell me everything, dear. From the beginning." Emma told her the whole story, about the auditorium and the bright lights, about playing Vivaldi's Winter, about Maestro Kozlov's harsh critique, about deciding to try the blindfold. Mrs. Hartwell listened carefully. When Emma got to the part about mentioning Mrs. Hartwell's name, the old woman's hand went to her chest. "You told him about me?" she whispered. "Yes, I told him you were my teacher, that you had been his student 30 years ago." Mrs. Hartwell's eyes filled with tears. "What did he say?" "He thought you were dead. Someone told him you died in a car accident years ago. He was so shocked to find out you were alive," he cried. Mrs. Hartwell, right there on the stage. He got down on his knees and cried. Mrs. Hartwell put her hand over her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Emma continued. "He wants to see you. He asked for your phone number and address. He said he's coming to visit next week. He wants to apologize for losing touch, and he wants to ask you to help train me." Mrs. Hartwell couldn't speak. She just sat there crying and shaking her head in disbelief. Maria got up and put her arm around the old woman. "Mrs. Hartwell, are you okay?" After a moment, Mrs. Hartwell nodded. She pulled a tissue from her pocket and wiped her eyes. "I'm fine. I never thought I would hear from Victor again. After the stroke, I felt so ashamed. I couldn't play anymore. I couldn't perform. I thought he would be disappointed in me." "He's not disappointed," Emma said firmly. "He's amazed that you kept teaching. He said you always were a gifted teacher. He called you his Eleanor." Mrs. Hartwell laughed through her tears. "His Eleanor. He used to call me that when I was young and made mistakes. He would say, 'My Eleanor,' always rushing through the difficult passages." "Tell me about him," Emma said. "Tell me about when you were his student." Mrs. Hartwell settled back in her chair. Her eyes got a faraway look, like she was seeing memories from long ago. "I was 18 when I came to Steinhardt. I was scared and excited, just like you were today. Victor was already famous then. Everyone wanted to study with him." She smiled. "He was so strict, so demanding. He made me cry at least once a week. But he also made me better. He pushed me to heights I never thought I could reach." "Were you friends?" Emma asked. "Or just teacher and student?" "Both," Mrs. Hartwell said. "He was much older than me, of course. Maybe 15 years older. But we connected over music. We would talk for hours about composers and technique and interpretation. He treated me like a colleague, not just a student. That was rare back then." She paused. "After I graduated, I joined an orchestra in Germany. Victor and I wrote letters, long letters about music and life. But then," her voice trailed off. "Then what?" Maria asked gently. "Then I fell in love with someone. A conductor. We got married. My husband was jealous of my friendship with Victor. He didn't like me writing letters to another man, even though it was completely innocent. So I stopped writing. I meant to explain to Victor, but I kept putting it off. And then months turned into years." Mrs. Hartwell wiped her eyes again. "My marriage didn't last. We divorced after 5 years. By then I felt too guilty to reach out to Victor. Too much time had passed. I thought he would be angry with me, so I just let it go." "He wasn't angry," Emma said. "He was sad. He missed you." Mrs. Hartwell nodded slowly. "I missed him too. Every day. Even now when I teach you, I use his methods. His philosophy. His voice is always in my head, guiding me." "He'll be here next week," Emma reminded her. "Are you ready to see him?" Mrs. Hartwell laughed nervously. "I don't know. I'm an old woman now. I can't see properly. I can't play." "What if he's disappointed?" "He won't be," Maria said confidently. Emma told us how he reacted. "He was overcome with emotion. He clearly cares about you very much." Mrs. Hartwell was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. It will be good to see him again, to hear his voice in person instead of just in my memory. Emma jumped up from the couch. Can I play for you? Can I show you how it went? Of course, dear. I want to hear everything. Emma took out her violin. She positioned it on her shoulder. First, I'll play what I played the first time. The Vivaldi. She played Winter just like she had at the audition. When she finished, Mrs. Hartwell nodded approvingly. Beautiful, Emma. Clear tone. Good dynamics. But then he criticized me, Emma explained. He said I played the notes but didn't feel the music. He said I lacked artistry. Mrs. Hartwell's face hardened. That sounds like Victor. Always harsh at first. So then I asked if I could try something different. Emma pulled out the black scarf. I told him about you teaching me to play Blindfolded, and then I played the chaconne. Mrs. Hartwell gasped. You played the chaconne? At your audition? Oh, Emma, that was so brave. Should I play it again now? Emma asked. Mrs. Hartwell hesitated. It's late, dear, and you must be exhausted. Save your strength. But tell me, did you make it through the whole piece? Yes, every note. I didn't make a single mistake. Mrs. Hartwell smiled with pride. I knew you could do it. I knew it from the first day I met you. You have something special, Emma. Something that can't be taught. You have heart. They talked for another hour. Mrs. Hartwell asked questions about the school, the judges, the building, everything. Emma answered as best as she could, describing every detail she could remember. Finally, Maria stood up. Emma, we should go home. It's getting very late and you need rest. Emma hugged Mrs. Hartwell goodbye. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for everything. None of this would have happened without you. Mrs. Hartwell hugged her back tight. You did this, Emma, your talent. Your hard work. Your courage. I just pointed you in the right direction. As Emma and Maria walked to the car, Emma looked back at the house. Mrs. Hartwell was standing at the window, her hand raised in a wave even though she couldn't see them clearly. In the car, driving the short distance home, Emma felt a deep sense of contentment. Everything was changing. Her whole life was about to be different, but for now, in this moment, everything felt perfect. Little did she know that next week's meeting between Mrs. Hartwell and Maestro Kozlov would change things even more, would bring healing to old wounds, would create new opportunities, and would prove that music really does have the power to connect souls across time and distance. The week passed slowly. Emma practiced every day at Mrs. Hartwell's house, but both of them were distracted. They kept talking about the upcoming visit. Mrs. Hartwell was nervous in a way Emma had never seen before. She changed her clothes 3 times one day. She cleaned her already clean house twice. She baked cookies, which she never did. He probably doesn't even like cookies, Mrs. Hartwell muttered on Thursday, staring at the cookies cooling on the counter. Maybe I should make tea cakes instead. Mrs. Hartwell, Emma said gently. He's coming to see you. Not to judge your baking. The old woman smiled. You're right, dear. I'm being silly. It's been so long. On Friday afternoon, Emma was at Mrs. Hartwell's house practicing scales when they heard a car pull into the driveway. Emma ran to the window and looked out. A sleek black car had parked behind Mrs. Hartwell's old sedan. The driver's door opened. He's here, Emma said. Her voice came out like a whisper. Mrs. Hartwell stood up from her chair. She smoothed down her dress. She had chosen a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes. Her gray hair was styled nicely. She looked beautiful for an old woman, Emma thought. There was a knock at the door. Mrs. Hartwell walked toward it, her hand trailing along the wall. Emma stayed back, unsure what to do. Mrs. Hartwell opened the door. Maestro Kozlov stood on the front porch. He wore a gray suit and carried a bouquet of white roses. His silver hair gleamed in the afternoon sun. His blue eyes were fixed on Mrs. Hartwell's face. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just stood there looking at each other. Then Mrs. Hartwell's voice, soft and trembling, broke the silence. Victor, Eleanor. His voice was rough with emotion. My Eleanor. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her. The roses got crushed a little between them, but neither of them cared. Mrs. Hartwell buried her face in his shoulder and started to cry. The maestro held her tight, his own eyes wet with tears. Emma felt like she was intruding on something private. She quietly moved toward the kitchen to give them space. After a long minute, they pulled apart. Mrs. Hartwell wiped her eyes. I'm sorry. I'm making a scene. Don't apologize, the maestro said. I've been crying for a week. Ever since I found out you were alive." He handed her the roses. She took them and brought them to her face, smelling them. White roses. "You remembered?" "Your favorite." "Of course I remembered." Mrs. Hartwell led him into the living room. Emma came out of the kitchen. "Hello, Maestro Kozlov." "Emma," he nodded at her. "Thank you for bringing us back together. You have given me a gift I never expected to receive." Mrs. Hartwell put the roses in a vase with Emma's help. Then they all sat down. The maestro took the spot on the couch. Mrs. Hartwell sat in her usual chair. Emma sat on the piano bench, quiet and observant. "Tell me everything," the maestro said to Mrs. Hartwell. "Tell me about the last 30 years." Mrs. Hartwell took a deep breath. Then she began to talk. She told him about joining the orchestra in Germany, about her marriage and divorce, about moving back to America and teaching privately, about the stroke 5 years ago. "I was teaching a young boy," she said, 12 years old. "Talented but lazy. I was demonstrating a passage from a Mozart concerto, and suddenly my left hand went numb. Then my face felt strange. The boy got scared and called his mother. She called an ambulance." She paused. "I woke up in the hospital 3 days later. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive, but I had lost most of my vision and much of the control on my left side." The maestro reached over and took her hand. "I'm so sorry, Eleanor. I wish I had known. I wish I could have been there." "How could you know?" Mrs. Hartwell said. "I had cut off contact. That was my choice. My mistake." "No," the maestro said firmly. "I should have tried harder to find you. When the letters stopped, I should have gotten on a plane and come to see you. But I was proud. I thought if you wanted to talk to me, you would reach out. So I waited and waited. And when someone told me you had died, I believed them because part of me had already accepted that you were gone from my life." "We were both stubborn," Mrs. Hartwell said with a sad smile. "Both too proud. Both too scared." "Scared of what?" Emma asked quietly. They both looked at her. The maestro smiled. "Scared of being vulnerable, I think. Scared of admitting how much we meant to each other." Mrs. Hartwell nodded. "Victor was my mentor, my teacher, but also my closest friend. When I got married, my husband couldn't understand that. He saw Victor as a threat, so I pushed Victor away to save my marriage. But the marriage failed anyway. I never married," the maestro said. "I told myself it was because I was married to my music. But really, I think I was waiting. For what? I don't know. Maybe for this. For a second chance to find the people who mattered most." They talked for hours. Emma mostly listened. She heard stories about Steinhardt 30 years ago, about concerts and competitions, about late-night practice sessions and heated debates about interpretations of famous pieces. She learned that the maestro had been born in Russia but left when he was young, that he had studied in Vienna and Paris before coming to America, that he had been engaged once but his fiancée died in a car accident before they could marry. She learned that Mrs. Hartwell had been a child prodigy, performing her first concert at age 7, that her parents had pushed her hard, maybe too hard. That music had been both her joy and her burden. "When I lost my ability to play," Mrs. Hartwell said, "I thought I had lost everything. But then Emma came into my life." She smiled at Emma. "Her mother brought her to my door 5 years ago. Maria had heard that I used to teach violin. She asked if I would consider taking on one student. Just one." Emma remembered that day. She had been so small, so shy. She had hidden behind her mother's legs. "I almost said no," Mrs. Hartwell admitted. "I thought, what could I teach anyone when I couldn't even play anymore?" But Maria was persistent. And when I heard Emma play for the first time, even though she was only 5 and knew nothing, I heard something, a spark, a quality in her tone that couldn't be taught. "That's what I heard too," the maestro said. "When she played at the audition, Blindfolded, I heard that spark grown into a flame. You taught her well, Eleanor, better than well. You gave her something that most teachers can't give. You gave her soul." Mrs. Hartwell's eyes filled with tears again. "That means everything to me, Victor. Your approval, your respect. You always had my respect," he said. "Even when I lost track of you, even when I thought you were gone, you were always in my heart as the student who understood music most deeply." Emma felt her own eyes getting wet. This was more than just a reunion between old friends. This was healing. This was forgiveness. This was love that had never died, just waited quietly for its moment to bloom again. The maestro turned to Emma. Now let's talk about your future. Eleanor, I want your input on how we should train Emma. What methods have you been using? What should I know? Mrs. Hartwell and the Maestro spent the next 2 hours discussing Emma's training. They talked about technique and repertoire, about emotional development and physical health. They argued a little in a friendly way about different methods, but mostly they agreed. She needs to continue the blindfold work, Mrs. Hartwell insisted. It has made her listening skills incredibly sharp. Agreed, the Maestro said. But we also need to work on her sight reading. She will need to learn new pieces quickly at Steinhardt. Of course, and her vibrato could be more refined in the higher positions. Yes, I noticed that. Also her bow distribution on long, sustained notes. Emma listened to them discuss her playing like she was a fascinating puzzle they were solving together. It should have made her feel self-conscious, but instead it made her feel cared for. These two brilliant musicians were putting their minds together to help her become better. I want to propose something, the Maestro said. For the summer, before Emma moves to the city, I want to come here every week. I will work with her for a few hours, and Eleanor, you will observe and give your input. We will create a training plan together. Mrs. Hartwell looked surprised. You would come here? Every week. But Victor, you're so busy. I will make time, he said firmly. This is too important. Emma is too important. And besides, he looked at Mrs. Hartwell with soft eyes. I have 30 years to make up for, with both of you. Mrs. Hartwell reached over and squeezed his hand. I would like that very much. Emma felt happiness bubble up inside her. The Maestro coming here every week, learning from both of them at the same time. It was more than she had ever dreamed. There's something else, the Maestro said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. He handed it to Mrs. Hartwell. I want you to come to Steinhardt. Not just to visit. To teach, Mrs. Hartwell froze. What? We have an opening for a teacher in the preparatory program. Young students, ages 5 to 10. You would be perfect for it. You could teach them the way you taught Emma, with patience and heart and soul. But Victor, I can't see. How can I teach at a prestigious academy when I can't even see my students' faces? The same way you taught Emma, he said simply. By listening, by feeling, by knowing music so deeply that you don't need eyes to understand it. He leaned forward. Eleanor, you are one of the finest teachers I have ever known. Your disability doesn't change that. If anything, it makes you better. You hear things other teachers miss. Mrs. Hartwell was quiet for a moment. I think I might. It scares me. But maybe that means it's the right thing to do. Emma hugged her teacher. You would be amazing. Those little kids would be so lucky to learn from you. Maybe, Mrs. Hartwell said, or maybe I would be the lucky one. To be back in that world, to teach more students, to work with Victor again. She laughed softly. Life is strange, Emma. You think everything is settled. You think you know how your story ends, and then a 10-year-old girl walks into your living room and changes everything. The weeks that followed were magical. Every Friday afternoon, the Maestro's black car would pull into Mrs. Hartwell's driveway. He would come inside carrying sheet music and ideas. He and Mrs. Hartwell would spend hours working with Emma. Sometimes they agreed on everything. Sometimes they argued. But the arguments were always productive, always aimed at helping Emma improve. More bow pressure here, the Maestro would say. No, less pressure, Mrs. Hartwell would counter. Listen to the tone. More pressure makes it harsh. They would debate. Emma would try it both ways. Usually they would find a compromise that was better than either original idea. Emma's playing improved rapidly. With 2 master teachers guiding her, she learned faster than she ever had before. She worked on technical exercises from the Maestro and emotional interpretation from Mrs. Hartwell. She practiced blindfolded and with her eyes open. She learned new pieces and perfected old ones. But more than the music lessons, Emma watched the relationship between her 2 teachers heal and grow. She saw the Maestro bring Mrs. Hartwell flowers every week. Different flowers each time. Roses and lilies and daisies. She saw Mrs. Hartwell's face light up every time she heard his car in the driveway. She heard them talk about the old days. About concerts they had attended together. About famous musicians they had met. About inside jokes that made them both laugh until they cried. One Friday in July, the Maestro arrived with big news. Eleanor, I spoke to the board again. They want you to start in September. The same time Emma starts. Mrs. Hartwell had been thinking about the offer for weeks. Emma could tell she wanted to say yes, but was still afraid. Victor, what if I fail? What if I can't do it anymore? You won't fail, he said confidently. And even if you struggle at first, I'll be there to help you. We'll figure it out together. Mrs. Hartwell looked at Emma. What do you think, dear? Should I do it? Emma nodded enthusiastically. Yes, definitely yes. Think about all those little kids who will learn from you. You'll change their lives just like you changed mine. Mrs. Hartwell smiled. Then she looked at the maestro. Okay, yes, I'll do it. The maestro's face broke into a huge smile. He jumped up and hugged her, lifting her slightly off the ground. They both laughed like young people, giddy with excitement. Emma applauded. This is so perfect. We'll all be at Steinhardt together. August came quickly. Emma and her mother went shopping for her uniform and supplies. They packed boxes of her belongings to take to the dormitory. It was exciting and sad at the same time. Emma was ready for this new adventure, but she would miss her home, her small town, her mother's cooking, her own bed. Mrs. Hartwell was packing too, preparing to move to a small apartment near the academy. The maestro had helped her find it. He seemed to be helping her with everything these days. Moving arrangements, paperwork, medical accommodations for her vision. He was devoted to making sure she had everything she needed. Emma's mother noticed it too. I think the maestro is in love with her, Maria said one evening as they packed Emma's clothes. Emma had been thinking the same thing. Do you think Mrs. Hartwell loves him too? I think she always has, Maria said. Sometimes love waits a long time to find its moment. The last week of August arrived. Emma had her final lesson in Mrs. Hartwell's living room, the living room that had been her second home for 5 years. She looked around at the familiar furniture, the pictures on the walls, the old piano in the corner. I'm going to miss this place, Emma said. Me too, Mrs. Hartwell admitted. But we're not saying goodbye. We're just saying, see you soon. We'll both be at Steinhardt. We'll see each other all the time. It won't be the same, though. No, Mrs. Hartwell agreed. It will be different. But different isn't always bad. Sometimes different is exactly what we need. On the first day of September, Emma and her mother drove to Steinhardt for the last time together. They carried Emma's boxes up to her room in Baker Hall. It was a small room with a bed, a desk, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the campus. Emma's roommate hadn't arrived yet. After they unpacked, Maria held Emma tight. I'm so proud of you, Mija. You're going to do wonderful things here. I'll call you every day, Emma promised. I know you will. But don't worry about me. Focus on your music. Focus on learning. This is your time to shine. They said goodbye at the entrance to the dormitory. Emma watched her mother's old car drive away, and she felt tears on her cheeks. But they weren't entirely sad tears. They were tears of transition, of endings and beginnings mixed together. Emma wiped her eyes and walked across campus to the main building. She had orientation in an hour. She walked through the same doors she had walked through months ago as a nervous auditioner, but now she belonged here. Now this was her school. She saw other students walking around. Some looked confident. Others looked as nervous as Emma felt. She saw parents saying goodbye to their children. She saw teachers greeting students. And then she saw Mrs. Hartwell. Her teacher was standing in the lobby looking a bit lost. She wore a nice blazer and carried a white cane that she hadn't had before. The maestro stood next to her, his hand on her elbow, guiding her. Mrs. Hartwell, Emma called out. Mrs. Hartwell's face lit up. Emma, is that you? Emma ran over and hugged her teacher. You're here. You're really here! I'm here, Mrs. Hartwell said, laughing. I'm terrified, but I'm here. You're going to be amazing, Emma said. The maestro smiled at both of them. My two favorite musicians, both here at Steinhardt. I feel like the luckiest man in the world. Other teachers walked by and greeted the maestro. Some looked curiously at Mrs. Hartwell. The maestro introduced her proudly to everyone. This is Eleanor Hartwell. She's joining our preparatory program faculty. She was one of my finest students, and now she's one of our finest teachers. Emma watched Mrs. Hartwell stand a little taller with each introduction, watched her confidence grow. By the time they had met a dozen people, Mrs. Hartwell was smiling and chatting easily. The orientation bell rang. Students started moving toward the auditorium. Emma had to go to the junior program session. Mrs. Hartwell had to go to a faculty meeting. I'll see you later, Emma said. We'll have dinner together, the maestro promised. All three of us, to celebrate our first day. Emma went to orientation. She sat in the auditorium surrounded by other talented young musicians. She listened to speeches about tradition and excellence. She received her schedule and her student handbook. But her mind kept drifting to Mrs. Hartwell and the Maestro, to how a blindfolded audition had brought them all together, to how music had the power to heal old wounds and create new beginnings. 3 months later, in December, Emma played her first concert at Steinhardt. She performed the Bach Chaconne in front of a full auditorium. Her mother was there in the audience, Mrs. Hartwell was there, the Maestro was there. And when Emma walked on stage, she carried the black silk scarf with her. She didn't play blindfolded this time. She tucked the scarf into her pocket as a reminder. A reminder of where she came from. A reminder of the teacher who believed in her. A reminder that sometimes the best way to truly see music is to close your eyes and listen with your heart. After the concert, as people applauded and flowers were presented, Emma saw the Maestro take Mrs. Hartwell's hand. Not as a teacher and student, not as old friends, but as something more. As two people who had found their way back to each other after 30 years apart. Mrs. Hartwell leaned toward him and whispered something. He smiled and whispered back. Then right there in the auditorium with hundreds of people around, he kissed her gently on the forehead. Emma smiled. This was her story. Her journey from a small town with big dreams to a prestigious academy where those dreams were coming true. But it was also their story. Mrs. Hartwell and Maestro Kozlov, two souls reconnected by music and a brave little girl who dared to play blindfolded. As Emma took her final bow and the applause washed over her, she thought about what Mrs. Hartwell always told her. Music isn't just about the notes you play. It's about the connections you make, the hearts you touch, the lives you change. Emma understood that now. She had played the notes. She had touched hearts. She had changed lives. Most importantly, she had proven that true artistry comes not from seeing with your eyes but from feeling with your soul. And that was a lesson that would stay with her forever. The years passed. Emma continued to study and grow. She performed in concerts across the country. She won competitions. She made a name for herself. But she never forgot the blindfolded audition. She never forgot the lesson of playing from the heart. Mrs. Hartwell taught at Steinhardt for 15 years. She changed countless young lives. Students who had been told they weren't good enough. Students who had been overlooked. Students who just needed someone to believe in them.